What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Something smells fishy with Mark Carney. Okay, too early for dad jokes. Mark Carney, of course, cutting people off from answering or asking questions during his campaign. Now, while Pierre Poilievre had a very successful campaign launch yesterday down in Toronto, or in one of the districts of Toronto, Mark Carney heading to Newfoundland to launch his run, I guess, his official run for his seat as Prime Minister of Canada, which hopefully he's not going to get. We all hope he's not going to get. Before we get into that story, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you that speaking of elections, right now, with the way elections are going, we know that the Liberals are going to do everything in their power to censor media. They're going to try to shut down any form of news getting out to you guys aside from mainstream media. Now is the time to subscribe, not just to this channel, but any political channels that you follow. I just want to remind you, if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, make sure you click it down below. Hit your bell for all notifications so that you're notified every time these channels drop anything newsworthy of what's happening in the very short term election that we're going to have. I also want to remind everybody that if you want to go into Mark Carney's elbows up, well, we have a solution to that. Our newest designs, the Fingers Up Canada F. Carney shirts, are now available in our shop. They're on sale for the next 48 hours. If you click the shop button down below, not only does it support the channel, but you guys get something really awesome to wear during this political season. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's get on to today's story. Here we go. Breaking. Carney called the police to protect him from fishermen. Why would he listen to fishermen now after 10 years of ignoring them? Seven of the most incompetent Liberal fisheries ministries in history in 10 years won't enforce the law. Shut down fisheries without talking to fishermen. They didn't use science for decisions. Harvesters aren't fooled by a new paint job on a leaky boat, meaning the Liberals and Mark Carney. Mark Carney is paying for all of these fake polls, which are handled by compromised Chinese delegates, by the way. It's just political interference. But as they're paying for those polls, here's footage outside of Mark Carney's presser. More than 50 Newfoundland and Labrador fish harvesters are outside Mark Carney's rally in St. John's. Police said they told them to move outside. The front doors are now locked. Carney started his speech saying he wants to acknowledge them and is here to listen. He's not here to listen. Mark Carney has a history of cutting anybody off who questions his authoritarianism. If anybody wants another 4 years of a dictatorship, Mark Carney's the guy for you, I guess. If you thought Justin Trudeau was bad, this guy just blatantly ignores anyone who dare question him. Let's take a look at the footage.
I don't think so. Bushers, no, we're not going to open the door anymore.
No.
Okay, not for anybody, because we're starting to come to the main entrance there now. If we have one of the delegates in there now, there might be 20 Russians in front of it.
20? Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I'm not worried about these.
Is that their goal, or are they trying to?
Oh, yeah, they want to get in, yeah.
So as you can see on those doors, the building is not at capacity. In fact, the event probably could have held way more people because it's a Mark Carney rally. What's funny is that Pierre's rally, when Pierre had his launch rally, shout out to the pleb, by the way, for broadcasting from there. It's nice to see some independent guys get media passes to be in these events. I've been calling for it for a long time. Really happy to see the pleb, any outlet that isn't, I guess, given special access to get in there and cover what Pierre's doing. Standing room only. People were turned away. Those buildings were packed with people trying to hear what Pierre had to say. If anything, that's the writing on the wall, folks. Again, anybody who's worried about polls, this was in the Toronto area, and Pierre packed the room. If Pierre sticks to his message, I think we're okay. I think we're going to be okay in this election. Now, that being said, I want to show some context as to why Mark Carney's cutting people out. If you know, last week he was in Alberta, which I don't know why he'd ever show his face around here. I used to question why Trudeau would do the same thing. I know Mark Carney lived in Alberta. A lot of people think he was born here. He was actually born in the Northwest Territories, but he lived in Alberta. So he came back here to do a photo op with the Edmonton Oilers and curse their team ultimately, the woke Edmonton Oilers. But now Mark Carney sits outside to answer questions from the Western Standard. And there's two things that are said in this interview that I want to highlight that really shows how Mark Carney is completely tone deaf to what's happening in politics. Not only that, but he thinks people are going to believe the shit that he's shoveling. Shout out to the Western Standard, by the way. Great organization. Good friends with Corey Morgan. Western Standard's James Westgate asks Carney if he will reimburse taxpayers for his pricey flight to Europe, which he should. Keep in mind, he's in a custodial position right now. He's not an elected prime minister. So he's not supposed to be flying around the world, be holding meetings, be promising anything, by pushing anything to say that there's going to be bills. Again, when he reduced the carbon tax to zero, he didn't do that. The Governor General did. Mark Carney is a liar. I mean, we all knew that. Carney says it fails to address the query. Snell says, I'll take that as a no then. Carney, no, you'll take that as a very comprehensive answer to your question. Just listen to the smugness of Mark Carney. But then they get into something else in this that, of course, is just appalling. Let's take a listen.
Prime Minister, thanks for taking my question and welcome to Edmonton. And James from the Western Standard. You recently...
Sorry about the microphone.
Yeah, no problem. I'm a pretty tall guy. You have not been elected in a federal election yet, and you recently flew to Europe on government wide-body jet at the expense of at least $500,000. So the question I have for you today, and maybe I'll say this before I ask the question, these people are...
So you can already see his face. See that? He shifted questions as soon as the guy mentioned that it was a $500,000 flight. He does not like being questioned about finances. Of course, Mark Carney, of course, not revealing his assets or anything to do with Brookfield because he feels entitled. This is Justin Trudeau again. Look at his attitude. Now, his smug attitude stays the course. Let's take a look.
Around you all paid for that flight, and you've not been elected yet. So will you commit to refunding these taxpayers for that flight?
Well, it's an interesting question, way of framing it. Look, and I'm going to go back to, I'm going to allude to the question that was asked previously by Mr. Staples from the Journal, and the situation that we're in as a country, which is we are in an economic crisis that's brought on, sorry, I'm going to answer the question, brought on by the tariffs that have been put on Canada, actual and prospective. One of the challenges...
The economic crisis was brought on by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and you were his advisor at the time.
I think you would find...
These people did not create that problem.
I certainly... hey, nobody in Canada created that problem.
Wait, what? What? Nobody in Canada created that problem? The inflation, the money printing, the radical spending. Keep in mind, Justin Trudeau spent more money in his 10 years than any other prime minister combined in Canada. Inflation's on the rise. Housing has a crisis. The borders have been open. We've been printing money like it's nobody's business. We've been donating money to regimes and dictatorships. And now Mark Carney says, no, it was all caused by Donald Trump. It was all because of Donald Trump. This is going to be the problem in this election. And this is why a lot of people need to get around this whole Trump thing. Mark Carney is pulling a Doug Ford. He's using Donald Trump to try and scare those with Trump derangement syndrome into voting for him, that he supposedly knows the 311 on Donald. And he's going to, or the 411, I should say, he's going to come down and crack down hard on him. What's funny is his first comment. What a selfish, arrogant response. Pierre handles a reporter a lot better than him. I've never heard so many ums and ahs. I know I drop a few in my videos, but this guy, if he gets on a stage to debate with Pierre, it's over. This guy's going to get demolished. He's going to be chewed up and spat out. Let's finish to his ridiculous response. This was the secondary part I was talking about, is that not only is he talking about his entitlement to fly around the world, but that he's going to blame our economic crisis on tariffs that have only existed for 6 weeks? Give me a break.
Nobody in Canada created that problem. The U.S. government has decided to put tariffs on all of its closest allies. All of its closest allies. I wouldn't for a moment suggest that anyone in Canada is the cause of this. What our responsibility is to take action to react to a different world that we're in. And part of the way we do that is we build out new partnerships, new opportunities, including opportunities. And I'm going to give you a specific one, and then I don't know if you have one more follow-up, but I'll give you a specific example. It goes to my previous answer, something I also discussed with the Premier this morning, which is Canada has many advantages, and one of them is in critical metals and minerals. One of the issues is how are we going to develop the trade routes and the trade corridors rapidly in order to export those critical metals and minerals? And who are our clients for that? Who are our customers? Do we only have one customer to the south of us, the customer that's attacking us, that doesn't respect the trade agreements that they signed? Or should we develop new customers in Europe? What's required, if I may, what's required for those new customers is to build out trade corridors and infrastructure, including what I referenced in my previous answer and discussed with the Premier, is the potential to go north, go to new deepwater ports, Churchill as an example, Gray's Point in Nunavut as another. And that creates a whole new set of opportunities for Albertans as a whole, for people across the country, for these hardworking people around me and those like them in the trades. And that's what my job is.
I'll take that as a no then.
No, you'll take that as a very comprehensive answer to your question.
Unfreaking believable. You'll take that as a comprehensive answer to your question. This guy doesn't get it, or at least he thinks we don't get it at the very minimum. To say that he's allowed to already jet set around the world while he's in a custodial position, and that all of Canada's economic problems have been brought on somehow in the last 6 weeks. Anybody who votes for this guy's a traitor to this country. I'm sorry. I've always agreed with free speech, the right to choose, a democracy. People always say I'm naive because I always say get out and vote, which you should, by the way, in this election. It's the most important election of our lifetime. But the reason you need to get out and vote is because there's still morons out there that believe this guy's selling the right ticket. How do you buy that? How do you buy into that? Take a look at how he treated Rosemary Barton. I know everybody's seen this, but again, doesn't like being questioned about his finances. He doesn't like being questioned about his actual responsibilities. Yet he talks about how responsible Canada needs to be. Let's take a look at this one.
I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Trump spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. It's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will. I have served in the private sector. I have stood up for Canada. I have left my roles in the private sector at a time of crisis for our country. I'm complying with all the rules. Your line of questioning is trying to invent new rules. I'm complying with the rules that Parliament has laid out and the responsibilities of the Ethics Commissioner. And I will continue to comply with them.
No, you won't. No, you won't. This guy's a jackass. He's a complete jackass. He's just here to ruin and pillage our country. This is why everyone, even if you've said before, we're not going to vote our way out of this, nothing's going to change, my vote doesn't matter, this time around, ladies and gentlemen, it does. I will keep stressing this in every video that this is the most important election of our lifetime. Chinese interference is going to be massive in this election. The votes are going to be rigged. If you watched the leadership race for the Liberals, if you saw how they disqualified any candidate who was polling better than Mark Carney, if you watched how they essentially installed Mark Carney as the leader, Crystia, Freeland, Karina Gould, all laying down, making it seem as though they were campaigning, all just to push Mark Carney to the finish line. If you can't sit and look at that and say that they're going to be fair in the next election, absolutely not. In fact, I've got a theory that that's the reason these polls are being paid to jack up Mark Carney, is so that when the fix is in, people buy it and say, well, those polls must have been pretty accurate, I guess, if Mark Carney won the seat of the prime minister. Get your voter card. Go out and vote. Make sure you stand in a lineup if you have to. Do your due diligence as a Canadian. If you really want to stand on guard for thee, this is the time. This is the time to show your Canadian patriotism. This is your time to do your due diligence. Ensure that we don't have another 4 years of this nonsense. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think Mark Carney is going out of his way not to answer people? Do you think he's got a lot to hide? I sure do. Let me know your thoughts down below. If it's your first time here, again, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure, please, hit that subscribe button. Now's the time. Turn on your bell and hit for all notifications. Make sure you join me live here on the channel tomorrow night for a special final live stream before I leave Calgary, as well as every Friday night for Friday Night Fringe, our live streaming show, where I'll be joined by my very beautiful wife, Mrs. Fringe, as we sit and talk about everything going on in politics, everything we know that's coming up ahead, as well as back and forth within the greatest YouTube community on this platform. We both look forward to hearing everything you guys have to say inside of those live streams. I look forward to hearing what you have to say tomorrow night and Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, right here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.